over here. This is Broomfield Township. This road, the River Road, used to be. You get over here. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to grab you by the shirt. This is McNeil's grandson.
Yes.
Wakeland 3.
Four.
4, okay. Oh, okay. This is River Road. But if you notice here, it said Big Rapids and Mount Pleasant State Road. Mount Pleasant used to be on the north side of town by River Road, and then somebody gave them a bunch of Dogtown. And they moved it south, so they gave up on that road. But this is one where your place is right here, okay? It's just about 8/10 of a mile over here. Here's Rollin Road, and you can still see it. We were going to put all these signs up there. But anyway, your piece is right here. Well, what you own now is right here, up to Sherman Road. Do you own up to Sherman?
Yep.
Yeah, you own that, like, whatever that. They took 90 and you have the rest, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. But anyway, I'd like to show you what it was like around here and what our trail would be. But they didn't want to put this on. We made it to go on Old State Road. I mean, this old Mount Pleasant to Big Rapids State Road. But that never got finished. And the reason it isn't finished here is because they moved the town south. That's why it's such a rough hill yet. But what makes it nice, it's still really natural and still really wild. So that was a good accident. They abandoned that as the state road and really became M20 south of town, you know, because it was a straight shot and easier, didn't have to go through all these hills. If you look here, we went to the tribe, and that's Zing Quack Lang, and that they call this the land of the pine because the greatest pine trees in the state of Michigan grew here. You're right in the middle of them, right in the middle. I mean, they were gigantic.
Yeah, there were still posts, there were still stumps, but they've been used for hunting land.
Yeah. But the reason it was because the land's so high and it drains so well. Pine doesn't grow down in the swamps. It grows, but it's all spindly and crappy. But these logs were often called the corkwood because they floated really well. Now, they had to get all the way from here, loaded like that, to the river. But thank goodness there's a piece of river down there, only, you know, where if you go down
where the river crosses.
River Road, that was it. That was the camp where it all started. They could only afford to send the big ones, so there's a story on that, but they took the huge ones. They were gigantic. They floated like corks. They had little dams along the way, and they ran these logs all the way from this property all the way to Bay City and Saginaw. Now, if you ever canoed down there, it's rough.
Yeah,
you have to push yourself.
I've done it.
But if you do it in the spring, they did it. And they were kind of heroic. But anyway, here's the camp. And if you look at the faces here, there's some black faces and some white faces and all kinds.
Wow, kind
Now,
of like this.
just like my family. I have, all my kids are minorities too. My grandkids anyway, not my kids. I'm all Dutch, so. Edmund Hall started the anti-slavery program in Michigan, party in Michigan, 1844. He's the guy that owned all this. I'll show you the property map in a minute. But anyway, he had an interracial group here, and he had we had, and I think I was telling you earlier, we had there was 3 interracial schools here when there weren't 10 in the whole state in the 1860s and 1870s.
Cool?
Interracial marriages, and pretty well full acceptance in the whole area because he was from Oberlin College, which was the center of the Underground Railroad. A lot of people mistakenly call this the center of the Underground Railroad. That isn't necessarily true. A lot of these were free people, or they came later. But in the 1860s and 1870s, there was a huge number of African American families. Usually they were mixed race people when they came here. But anyway, they have stayed here. And if you hang around, and if you went out to School Section Lake right now, they're having a party, the picnic, the old settlers picnic. And those people can tell you every relative they've got. And they're still in here, they're still living on the same road. Like you met a guy that knew they would know him. These people here don't move. They've lived here a long time and had a really good life way before, you know, before the Civil War. So that's kind of a, I think something you really ought to know, because there weren't many spots like this. Here's the old roads I'm talking about. Again, here was your place. This is the 1899 map. The one you saw before was 1879. If you notice, Edmund Hall owned all this. The only land he sold, these are all the old settlers. What they prefer to call themselves, the old settlers, the people that came from an African American heritage. There's the Guys and the Normans and the Letts and the...
Yay, guys.
And I've got an article on the Todds that I'll give you,
Oh, wow.
because they
Those
were
are the ones
in
we
the,
knew.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that tells where their grandpa came here. The railroad.
Bought it from the Todds.
You bought yours from the Todds, that
Yeah.
section.
This section too.
They cut down all the pines, the corkwood. Then they couldn't do anything else. So it's interesting on this story that the guy by the name of McGeorge Bundy. Anybody think that rings a bell? McGeorge Bundy. He was the Secretary of State for Kennedy. That was his grandson.
Wow.
Unfortunately, he was a really great guy. He was very liberal. He did a lot of wonderful things, but he's also known as the architect of the Vietnam War, which isn't too distinctive, and he didn't like it, but they fell into that by accident. Anyway, this, getting back to the railroad, you
Well,
can
we
see
owned it by
Bundy
that
Station. Yeah, the Bundy Station was right down the road from here. And they see the old things, and they think that was a school. But if you look at the map I just went by, but right here is where Bundy Station was. And here was a school. Notice the school there, and there was a school there.
Yep.
Okay, those were both interracial. There was another one down Sherman Road,
There's a school
Eldred
right
Road.
here.
Yeah. Now here's the interesting place. The next section down, the McClinticks have owned that for about 65 years. They're like your family. They don't sell their property, they keep it forever. Edmund Hall was that way. He owned all this land for 65, 70 years. Even after his died, his kids kept it like you did. But the old settlers, you remember any Letts? Anybody by the name of Lett?
Yeah,
Marvin
yeah.
was a teacher.
We had a friend, Chris Lutz, but a different family.
Okay. Well, they might have all come from the same one. A guy by the name of Joe Lett came up. He got one of the first homesteads next to the Norman homestead down on the county, near the end of the county. And he did all the lumbering for Edmund Hall on Section 4 over there. Okay, that Section 5 is right across the way here. And that's been in the same family. In fact, anybody, you know the Howards?
Yeah, Howard.
The Howards are known for their horses and strawberries.
Yeah.
They were pulpers before that. They came and pulpwood out here, and they owned that section with some other people. They call it Conservation Estates. I don't know if you remember that stuff, but that's all been going on here for years and years and years. Here's something really fun. And anybody from Mount Pleasant? Yeah. Good. 20,000 years ago, we were all under a mountain of ice. It was 2 miles high over the whole state of Michigan. And then it melted with a little hole. Kept Mount Pleasant under ice, and we think you guys have been under ice ever since. We can't make any sense out of you people. You come and you go. It's like nothing counts. You buy a house, you sell a house, nobody knows you've been there. Your family, they know they've been here. This green part was the first opening in over 200,000 years. And what happened, this exploded with vegetation, not very high, but things like woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and all kinds of animals came up eating all that. It was like the Garden of Eden. See, we're right here, right on the edge of it. You go that way, Mount Pleasant was right, you could from here probably see a wall 2 miles high of a glacier. That's absolutely, maybe 14,000, pretty close to that time. But another thing happened then. If you remember the story of how did the Indians get here, the first people get to our country, well, they crossed on a land bridge or an ice bridge over in Alaska, and they arrived at the same time. So this area had Native Americans running around up in here eating, and they pretty well agree they slaughtered these all off. They were so easy to kill. You didn't even need anything. You just a spear, you could get a club. I mean, they couldn't get away from you. There was nowhere to hide. So anyway, that was how we all started. And the first Native Americans came here, And they were here a long time before they could get out into the Saginaw Valley. This was created, by the way, by a big glacier pushing all these huge rocks on the top. Oh, you see rocks all through here. You can't hardly walk. And all those rocks probably came from there when they pushed out Saginaw Bay and pushed it up in here. I don't know if I'm boring you here, but this is a new tree in the forest. People say, oh, the oil money is terrible, but I imagine your family thought it was okay.
Helped us.
Well, the original timber did. That's how they made a living. This was not lumber camps like the rest of the world. This was not a place like that. This had families that lived in homes. They came to work in the wintertime. They made enough money. They could clear their land. They had a part-time earning in the wintertime so they could clear their land. It was a bear to pull all these stumps out and, you know, to drag all the trees off and cut them all down. So way back in the 1860s and 70s when the first people came here, particularly the old settlers, this was a godsend to have the forest in these hills for them because they could make a living and then clear their land and start growing their crops. It did the same thing in the 1860s when the gas wells came in, and then in the 1880s, soon after your dad died, they found the oil in here, and that was pretty nice for folks too, and it helped them in the hardest times is when the oil hit, when the lumber hit, and then the gas hit, and then the oil hit. So it wasn't just hitting, it was coming at a good time. Early conservation-oriented lumber yard. Just as they were not socially like the other people, they were not, they did not lumber like other people. Were college graduates. How many college graduates were there in the 1860s and 1870s? None. But Edmund Hall was. He went to Oberlin College, which was the center of the Underground Railroad, both spiritually, in terms of its philosophy, and physically. 3 or 4 of the main routes went right through Oberlin College when he was involved with there. But anyway, I don't want to go on about him so much, but he was very conservation-oriented. Josiah Littlefield, Littlefield Lake, Littlefield Road, that was his nephew. His nephew was his protege, and he taught him all he knew. And together they did a whole lot of conservation-oriented things. I'll digress a little bit into like the big forest fires. Remember, they had to float these monstrous logs. They couldn't take them any bigger than that. They had to float them all the way to Bay City. Now think of what a bear that would be. I mean, that would be tough. They couldn't take the little stuff. They couldn't afford to wrestle and fight with it. So they left the other stuff laying on the ground, and that's how your forest fires started. There was nothing intentional about it, but they couldn't afford to have guys, you know, haul those smaller logs down, and they were all laying through here, and when the forest fires, it took off. But they were the first people to replant. This is one of the first school forests in Michigan, and that was Josiah Littlefield up in Farwell. But they built Old State Road, as you might know. I live by Halls Lake, if you know where that is. And it went all the way from Halls Lake to Farwell, Old State Road, the one that I showed you over there. You talked about the school. The social fabric of Bundy Hills was heavily influenced by Oberlin College Congregationalists. They were very big into racial and gender equality. They were, as I said, big in the anti-slavery movement. And that carried over here. And all the people happened to come from, all the old settlers, almost every one of them came from southern Ohio and near the Oberlin area. Now, if that's just happenstance, I don't know. No. But it's strange that Edmund Hall and all these people showed up here at the same time. I don't know if they knew about him, he knew about them. But anyway, that's one of the schools. You can see the interracial stuff here, and that went on forever. This was like in the 20s or 30s, but it's always gone on, even since Gene was around. There's one of our older residents. Gene? I'm Larry. Larry Schaftenaar. Yes. Well, I'm telling, this is Wakeland McNeil's kids and grandkids and all this stuff. Did you know Wakeland?
Oh, yes.
So yeah, I told you.
Yes, I knew him. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell them some
Nice to
stuff,
meet you.
Gene. They don't believe that anybody remembers. Everybody remembers everybody around here. You count around here. They'll never forget you. Gene's family has been here. He's just a pup. They were way before he was. Where did the first people go? This is an old Ojibwe village, and they would have been big around the river and around that area. The names are gone. and the culture is basically gone. But the genetics are here like crazy. At least a quarter of the people that in Chippewa Hills have been said year after year that they still have Native American genes. And for instance, my wife found out she was 1/8 Native American a while ago that nobody told. My grandkids are a third. It's pretty hard to keep track of all that stuff, but it's something today that people can be proud of and they talk about. And it started here. We were first, so it's been here forever. I wish you could meet some of the old settlers though, and they're coming. They're having their big picnic today. There's dozens of them. Maybe I just end with this, but I thought that was fitting. Abraham Lincoln smiling, a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated the proposition that all men are created equal. Well, that happened here. The Normans, by the way, are still here. They've been here since before, well, just after the Civil War. There's other families in different parts of the area, the Cummings and the Guys, and I'm missing one other name, but they were here before the Civil War in the 1860s, escaping oppression and stuff. And it's never been perfect anywhere, but it's probably been better here with equality, prejudice. That's a quick overview, but if you ever want to sit down and really go in deep into records and the old stuff, come back and it's all there.
I think these pictures and descriptions really capture the essence of it. I mean, it's enough to boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, well, that was the hope.
No, that's great.
While I'm a teacher, I could take months.
go.
It was hard. It took me months to get it down to little signs. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, good to meet you.
Excellent, thanks.
Well, thank you.
All right.
It was a pleasure doing it with you. I mean,
All right. Thank you.
yeah.